Hey guys, I'm Caitlin with Appalachian Reclamations, and today we are at the beautiful historic Charles McDowell house in Morganton, North Carolina. This house is special because it's actually the location, this property is the location of the meeting of the Over Mountain Victory men when they planned for the Battle of Kings Mountain, which was a turning point for the South in the Revolutionary War. This is our hometown. There's a lot of history here, so we love coming to this property. It's open to the public throughout the year to come take tours. And also in September, the Historic Burke Foundation does a great program. This one is especially unique because it's the 250th anniversary of America. So there's a great program here this weekend. And we are here today because Appalachian Reclamations has been charged with the task of restoring one of the historic barns on the property. This home was built around 1812, and we believe that the barn was built around the same time. We're going to take you along as we go through this process. This is the barn located on the back side of the property. It's behind the house, the kitchen, and the kitchen garden. As you can see, there are some issues as far as structural integrity goes. The whole barn is leaning this way. So our plan is to go in. You can see that we've already started labeling the logs. There is an entire process that we will discuss here. And for now, the logs are just going to be torn down so that the cabin can be stored before restoration begins. I've got my helpers here today, as you can see. Say hello. Say hello. So this barn is believed to be dated around the same time period as the house, the early 1800s. The family did own this property in the 1700s, and at that time it was around 1,500 acres. I'm going to show you a little closer up. Obviously that basketball goal is not original to the time period.
As you can see, we've begun to label this log cabin, which is in pretty sad shape. It's been left to its own devices for many, many years. But in taking these cabins down, we label every piece of it so that we can reconstruct it the way it was taken down. We will label it, dismantle it, replace any logs that need replacing with logs of the same time period and same species. We have a large inventory of replacement logs. One of the things about this cabin that's so sad is it's really begun to lean, and most of the logs that have caught the weather about halfway down are rotten. So they'll have to be replaced. Every piece of this barn will be labeled, including the inside logs. And through the years, there's been a lot of debate what this cabin was used for. However, I think we've pretty much determined that it was a livestock barn its entire life. But the floor plan has changed through the years. You can see these notches that don't have logs in them now. So these logs have been taken out and probably came all the way down on both sides of this door. They're notches. And those logs have been cut out to make this roomier inside. However, there are still some logs here that tell a story. There were probably logs all the way across this side and this side. You can see the logs that remain up high and the notches in the logs pretty much tell the story of what this log building was. And as you can see over here on this log, it has Morganton, North Carolina wrote on it. And I've seen that same handwriting in some reclaimed chests that we found in other barns. So that was probably some mercantile local here where people could purchase dry goods. However, this barn has had a loft put in it later in its life. We don't believe that loft was there. It's also had the roof replaced probably several times. As you can see, we have a stack or a pallet of cedar shakes that probably came off of this barn. We also have some original doors to the 1812 house that are sitting out here, and we hope to restore these, bring them back to life, and use them somewhere here on the plantation, which was originally 1,500 acres back in the 1700s. This, as you can see, is a cover for an old gristmill wheel, and we have no idea what else we'll find in this barn as we begin to dismantle this. We've already found some beams that probably came out of the house when it was restored.
As you can see, this is a true family business. Our homeschool lesson for the day is learning about the Quaker Meadows Plantation and the McDowell house, and also we're learning how to age a log cabin, right, and how to restore it and label it and everything. And we're also being eaten alive by mosquitoes in here. Okay, so tell me why there are wood slats on this side. What is the significance of that? What was this used for?
As I mentioned earlier, this barn has had many purposes through its 200-year lifespan. And at some point in its life, this became a corn crib. As you can see, the slats in the interior of this wall, that's so they can put the corn on the cob in here, and it can breathe, get some air, and it dries the corn. So this whole side of this barn has been converted to a corn crib at some time or another. As you can see, this barn has probably had 2 or 3 roofs on it in its lifetime. So the roof is not original to the structure. And they put corrugated metal in the eaves on both ends of this barn. There's actually 2 or 3 logs that I haven't numbered yet under that metal. And I'll wait till the day that we're actually taking the roof off to go ahead and number those logs. So you can also see that most of these logs look the same. All these are heart pine logs down to here. And usually the bottom logs in a structure from the 1800s, those are oak because they last longer. You can see over here, the 2 logs there that have a different color, the 2 logs here that have a different color, the seal beam here that has a different color than the rest of the heart pine logs. And it's usually that way in about every log structure we dismantle. Oak on the bottom, heart pine or poplar the rest of the way up, because those logs are much lighter to get 15 feet in the air than that oak would be. And back then they just used mules, pulleys, ropes to construct these cabins. As you can see, I'm sure that everyone who does this has a labeling system. This is my labeling system. As you can see, the front has been labeled. I put all my tags on the left end of the logs because I know that's the left end of the log. This is the front, this is the right, that's the left side, and that's the back side. I always number on the left, so I know exactly where that log goes back to or which logs need replacing. It's not rocket science.
And you always number on the exterior of the building?
Always number the exterior left side of any log. For instance, this wall is the right side. I have 2 logs on the bottom. Right 1A, right 1B. Right 2A, right 2B. And I number as I go up. I know that way, if I've lost every log in this cabin, I know where this log went. It went on the right, first log, A side. Anytime there's two, most of these front ones are R1 through or F1 through F13 because they're one-piece logs. All these up to R8 are two-piece logs. So R1A up to R8A, and then you have a B on that side. That way I know where they all go. So we can replace them, we can evaluate each log upon its own merit as we begin to go through this after we've dismantled it, and we know what size logs and where the log goes that needs replacing. And we will find replacement logs for these.
And you take photos and videos of the whole process. It's pretty meticulous.
Yeah. First thing I do is label the entire cabin. And this one's a little different because I'll be inside labeling some logs. There's some cross logs inside, so I'll number those also. Then I photograph the entire building inside and outside. Then I'll go back and diagram it and measure each log so I know how long this log is and how long these logs are. And I'll put those measurements down in my diagram so that if something should happen to me or anybody else, somebody can take my notes and reconstruct this building. Another thing that always amazes me about these old log structures or any old log house built before 1900, they're all stacked up on rocks. Currently, you can't do that. You have to build a cinder block foundation, and you can put fascia rock on it to dress it up. But every one of these log buildings built then has a rock foundation, rock pillars, that has stood here for 200 years. A cinder block foundation won't last 200 years, but these rocks have lasted 200 years. If you notice about this one, you can see nails in these logs. God only knows what this was back in the day. They braced this wall up years and years ago because it already had a lean to it. You can see it had a seal beam in the middle of the barn that went under the entire barn. Sometime during this barn's lifetime, that seal beam had been cut out. There's part of the seal beam on that side of the barn, part of it on this side. This was, I'm sure, replaced later to shore that side of the barn up to keep it from collapsing. And I'm sure these boards were added sometime later. And you can see the other rock foundation here. It's funny how all the big rocks are on the bottom. If you notice, as you gradually go up, so I've seen them sitting on. You can see this one is sitting on a little tiny rock, the last rock wedged in to keep that building safe from collapse. Here's some other rocks. As you go around, you see big rock and usually a small rock on top. That's what they use to level these barns. As you can see, sometime in its life, there's probably been another shed that comes out from this barn because of this. And you can see the other shed out here that's probably not original to the barn. I'd say it's not. And then you see all these logs at one time were one-piece logs. But somewhere in its life, you can see it had logs all the way through the middle of the whole barn. And now we're missing 1, 2, 3, 4 logs. And these that are here, only 2 of them go all the way across now. These have been cut off inside. And as you notice, I number my logs always on the left side. All those are just B1, 2, 3 through 13. But I had to come over here because there's been a window cut in here sometime in its life, and I named this B8B. Back, 8 log up. That means there's 2 logs in that run. B. If there was another log, it'd be C in that run. So, as you see, we've labeled this, and I use screws because it's much easier. And I'll come back and put a screw on both ends of each of these pieces of paper, just so during transport, that piece of paper won't blow off. But these are waterproof paper, of course, using a Sharpie pencil or pen. And we can take it to the sawmill, the whole cabin, have the logs heat treated, then we'll put them in dry storage and start going one log at a time and evaluating whether it's reusable or not. If not, we will find a log to replace each of these rotten ones. And like I said earlier, you can pretty much see from looking at this barn, from here up, it's probably reusable. But because of the lean and because it doesn't have a big overhang, the rain was hitting these bottom logs. All these are going to need to be replaced. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 logs that we know will have to be replaced. Can we replace them here? That way? Maybe. Just depends on what that side of the log looks like. But most of the time, your bottom 4 or 5 logs are going to be rotten because they've got rain damage through the years. As you can see on both eaves, this end has corrugated steel, the other end in the eave has 5V metal roofing. And once we get all this off in both eaves, you'll see a significant difference in these logs and the logs that have been covered up for 100 years. Because those logs that have been covered up and can also breathe, they'll look like new logs. And we see that in every cabin. That's why we always try to reconstruct with at least a 2-foot overhang. That saves the rain from blowing in on the bottom logs. Or when we rebuild log cabins, we also suggest to the client, build a wraparound porch all the way around. That way you're protecting every log in the building. And a wraparound porch really adds to a log cabin. This one, however, will be reconstructed just as it sits. It will not have a wraparound porch. We're trying to remain as accurately historically as we can. And we've been consulting with the Historical Society of North Carolina on this barn. And we pretty much come to the agreement. We are not sure what time period we're looking at to rebuild this one. But we have decided, and the state has decided, that 6 months from now, there'll be no need to have this conversation. This barn will collapse. That's why we're in the process of numbering it now and hopefully taking it down and storing it within the next month so that we can go back. The state can make a decision. The Burke Historical Society can make a decision on what can be done with it and when. Because right now, if we wait another 6 months or a year, there's no need to have that discussion because this barn will be on the ground. These logs, look at the interior of these logs and then look at the exterior. They're much better protected on the inside if they've not been getting rain. And you can see the cabin tells you a story. Oak, pine, and here you can see this. There's been a notch cut in this that probably ran all the way across the barn, and there was a matching one on the other side. And this may have been a corn crib on this side also. You can also notice that this seal beam still has the bark. So it may have been replaced at some time during this barn's lifetime because none of the other logs have the bark attached. This is an oak beam with some of the bark still attached, which you should never do. But back then, they were in a hurry. These logs were probably cut, and this barn was built within a week. They didn't worry about drying the logs, aging the logs, because the corner notches always lock it together and allow it to dry through the years because it can breathe. You can also see that this barn has never been chinked, or you would see some evidence of mud, corn cobs, whatever they chink with. But this log cabin has never been chinked, which I love. It actually saves the logs. But it's a little bit cooler in the winter when it's not chinked. That's why we also believe that this was not used for human habitation. It was a livestock barn.
And here we have a historic sun-drop bottle. Any idea where that came from?
Probably a local food line or